Escape the overthinking trap. Stop thinking, start winning. Written and published by Fearless Audiobook. Introduction. Every day, millions of people lose battles no one else can see. They smile in public, carry on with their responsibilities, and appear perfectly fine. But behind the scenes, their minds never stop. Every decision becomes a debate. Every mistake becomes a life sentence. Every possibility turns into another reason to hesitate. The prison isn't built with steel bars or locked doors. It's built with endless thoughts. The cruelest part is that overthinking often disguises itself as wisdom. It whispers that one more analysis, one more plan, or one more perfect answer will finally bring certainty. Yet the more you chase certainty, the further peace seems to slip away. Days become weeks, opportunities quietly disappear, confidence begins to fade, and life keeps moving while you remain trapped inside your own head. But there is good news. Your mind is not your enemy. It has simply learned a habit that no longer serves you, and like any habit, it can be changed. This audiobook is not about silencing every thought or pretending fear doesn't exist. It's about learning how to stop giving fear the steering wheel. You'll discover why your mind clings to worry, how to break free from destructive thinking patterns, and how to replace hesitation with courage, clarity, and action. By the time you reach the final chapter, you won't simply think differently, you'll live differently. Your greatest victories begin the moment you stop letting your thoughts decide your future. Let's begin the journey. Chapter 1. The prison inside your mind. Imagine waking up in the morning with a mind that is already exhausted before your feet even touch the floor. Your body is ready to begin the day, but your thoughts have been running for hours. You replay yesterday's conversations, worry about today's responsibilities, and fear tomorrow's uncertainties. Before you've accomplished a single task, you've already fought dozens of imaginary battles. This is the invisible prison of overthinking. Unlike a physical prison, this one has no walls you can touch and no locks you can see. Yet its grip can be just as powerful. It convinces you to question your abilities, doubt your decisions, and delay your dreams. The tragedy is that many people spend years living inside this mental cage without ever realizing they're trapped. Overthinking doesn't usually announce itself as a problem. Instead, it disguises itself as responsibility. It tells you that you're simply being careful. It whispers that if you think just a little longer, you'll finally discover the perfect answer. It promises certainty if you analyze every possibility. But certainty rarely comes. Instead, the mind finds another question, another fear, another scenario to explore. The result is exhausting. Think about how often you've replayed a conversation after it ended. You wonder whether you said the wrong thing or whether someone misunderstood you. Hours later, the conversation is still alive in your mind, even though everyone else has already moved on. Or perhaps you've delayed making an important decision because you wanted more information. Days turned into weeks. Weeks became months. Eventually, the opportunity disappeared, not because you lacked talent, but because your thoughts kept asking for one more guarantee that life could never provide. Overthinking quietly steals something far more valuable than time. It steals confidence. Every time you second-guess yourself, you send your mind a dangerous message. I can't trust my own judgment. Over time, this message becomes a belief. Soon, even the smallest decisions begin to feel overwhelming. Choosing a career, starting a business, speaking up in a meeting, asking someone out, or pursuing a lifelong dream all begin to feel impossibly risky. Meanwhile, life keeps moving. The people who appear fearless aren't necessarily more intelligent or more prepared. They simply understand something that overthinkers often forget. Action creates clarity. Waiting for perfect certainty almost never does. Overthinking also steals your peace. Your body cannot always distinguish between an imagined threat and a real one. When your mind repeatedly imagines failure, embarrassment, rejection, or disaster, your nervous system reacts as though those events are happening right now. Your heart races. Your muscles tighten. Your sleep suffers. Even moments that should be joyful become overshadowed by worries about what might go wrong. It's like carrying a heavy backpack filled with stones. At first you barely notice the extra weight. But as the hours, days, and years pass, every step becomes harder. Eventually, you forget what it feels like to walk freely. The most heartbreaking part is that overthinking often keeps people from discovering who they could become. Dreams remain unfinished because the timing never feels perfect. Conversations never happen because the words never seem good enough. Opportunities pass by because fear always finds another reason to wait. Yet there is an important truth you must remember. Your thoughts are not always facts. Just because your mind predicts failure doesn't mean failure is inevitable. Just because your mind imagines rejection doesn't mean rejection is certain. Your brain is designed to anticipate danger, but it is not designed to predict the future with perfect accuracy. Freedom begins the moment you stop treating every thought as reality. Throughout this audiobook, you won't learn how to stop thinking altogether. That isn't possible, nor is it desirable. Instead, you'll learn how to stop becoming a prisoner of your thoughts. You'll discover how to recognize the mental habits that keep you trapped, replace fear with understanding, and build the confidence to move forward even when uncertainty remains. Every prison has a door. For many people, the door has been unlocked all along. The only thing keeping them inside is the belief that they cannot leave. Today, you have taken the first step toward walking out of that prison. And once you experience what life feels like on the other side, where your mind serves you instead of controls you, you'll wonder why you ever believed those invisible walls were real. Chapter 2. Why your brain won't let go. Have you ever promised yourself that you would stop worrying, only to find your mind returning to the exact same problem an hour later? You tell yourself, "I've already thought about this enough," yet somehow the conversation inside your head continues. It feels as though your brain has a mind of its own. The truth is, your brain isn't trying to make your life miserable. It's trying to protect you. For thousands of years, the human brain evolved with one primary mission: survival. Long before modern cities, smartphones and office jobs existed, our ancestors faced real dangers every day. A strange sound in the bushes could mean a predator. A poor decision could mean starvation. Those who noticed threats quickly were more likely to survive and pass on their genes. Your brain still carries that ancient programming. The problem is that today's threats are often emotional rather than physical. Instead of worrying about wild animals, you worry about making mistakes, being rejected, losing opportunities, or disappointing others. Yet your brain reacts almost the same way. It scans constantly for danger, searching for anything that might hurt you, even if that danger exists only in your imagination. This is why uncertainty feels so uncomfortable. Your mind loves certainty because certainty feels safe. It wants clear answers, guaranteed outcomes, and complete control over the future. Unfortunately, life offers very few guarantees. Every meaningful decision comes with some degree of uncertainty. Every opportunity carries risk. Every relationship involves vulnerability. Instead of accepting uncertainty, many people try to eliminate it by thinking harder. Imagine you're about to send an important email to your boss. You write it, read it again, and begin making small changes. Then you wonder if your tone sounds too confident. You soften a sentence. Suddenly, you worry that you sound too uncertain, so you rewrite it again. Minutes become an hour. Nothing disastrous was hiding in that email, but your brain keeps insisting that one more revision will protect you from embarrassment or criticism. This is one of overthinking's greatest illusions. The belief that more thinking always leads to better outcomes. Sometimes careful thinking is valuable. Planning, learning, and solving problems are essential skills. But there comes a point when thinking stops being productive and starts becoming repetitive. You stop looking for solutions and begin chasing certainty, a destination that doesn't exist. Fear often fuels this cycle. Fear of failure tells you that one mistake will ruin everything. Fear of rejection convinces you that other people's opinions define your worth. Fear of making the wrong choice whispers that every decision must be perfect because there won't be another chance. These fears aren't facts. They're protective alarms, like a smoke detector that becomes too sensitive and goes off while you're making toast. Your brain sometimes sounds the alarm when no real emergency exists. Another powerful force behind overthinking is the desire for control. Human beings naturally want to feel in control of their lives. When something unpredictable happens, the mind often responds by analyzing every detail. It believes that if it can understand everything, it can prevent future pain. But life doesn't work that way. You cannot control every outcome, every conversation, or every person's opinion. Trying to do so only creates frustration and emotional exhaustion. The more tightly you grip life, the more anxious you become. Ironically, the people who appear calm are not those who control everything. They are the ones who have learned to live with uncertainty. They understand that confidence isn't knowing exactly how everything will turn out. Confidence is believing that whatever happens, they can handle it. That shift changes everything. Instead of asking, "How can I make sure nothing goes wrong?" they begin asking, "How can I respond wisely if something does go wrong?" One question demands impossible certainty. The other builds resilience. Resilience doesn't come from predicting every challenge. It comes from trusting your ability to face challenges as they arise. So the next time your mind refuses to let go of a problem, pause for a moment. Ask yourself a simple question. Am I solving this problem, or am I searching for certainty? The answer may surprise you. Remember, your brain is doing what it was designed to do. It wants to keep you safe, but safety and growth rarely travel the same road. Every worthwhile achievement, starting a business, changing careers, falling in love, speaking up or chasing a dream, requires stepping into uncertainty. You don't need a brain that never worries. You need a mind that knows when to thank fear for its concern, then move forward anyway. Understanding why your brain clings to worry is the first step toward breaking free from it. Once you recognize that overthinking is not a sign of weakness, but an overprotective habit, you stop fighting yourself. And when you stop fighting your own mind, you can finally begin teaching it a better way to live. Chapter 3. The Stories You Tell Yourself. There is a storyteller living inside your mind. It never takes a day off. From the moment you wake up until the moment you fall asleep, it interprets everything that happens around you. It explains why someone didn't reply to your message. It predicts how tomorrow's meeting will unfold. It reminds you of yesterday's mistakes and imagines next year's failures. The remarkable thing is that this storyteller isn't always telling the truth. Your mind doesn't simply observe reality, it creates meaning from it. And sometimes the meaning it creates is based more on fear than on fact. Imagine sending a text message to a friend. An hour passes with no reply. Then another. Suddenly your mind begins writing a story. They're upset with me. I must have said something wrong. Maybe they don't want to be my friend anymore. By the time your phone finally buzzes, you've already lived through an emotional drama that never actually happened. Your friend simply had a busy day. This is how assumptions quietly become beliefs. The danger isn't that your mind creates stories. Every human brain does. The danger comes when you stop questioning those stories and start accepting them as reality. Overthinking feeds these stories until they become larger than life. A single mistake at work turns into, "I'm terrible at my job." One awkward conversation becomes, "I'm socially awkward." One failed attempt becomes, "I'll never succeed." Notice how quickly the mind moves from describing an event to defining an identity. Events are temporary. Identity feels permanent. That difference changes everything. Psychologists often refer to these distorted thinking patterns as cognitive distortions, mental shortcuts that lead us to inaccurate conclusions. While the term may sound technical, you've probably experienced them countless times. One of the most common is catastrophizing. This happens when your mind automatically jumps to the worst possible outcome. A small headache becomes a serious illness. A delayed email becomes a lost opportunity. A minor disagreement becomes the end of an important relationship. Your imagination races far ahead of reality, preparing you for disasters that never arrive. Another common distortion is mind reading. Without realizing it, you begin assuming you know exactly what other people think. They think I'm incompetent. They're judging me. They're laughing at me. The truth is, you rarely know what's happening inside someone else's mind. Yet your brain confidently fills in the blanks, usually with the harshest possible interpretation. Then there's all or nothing thinking. In this mindset, everything becomes black or white. If you aren't perfect, you believe you're a failure. If one plan doesn't work, you assume nothing ever will. If someone disagrees with you, you think you've lost their respect completely. Real life is rarely that extreme. Most experiences exist somewhere in the middle, where growth, learning, and second chances live. Why does the mind do this? Because stories help the brain make sense of uncertainty. When information is incomplete, your mind would rather invent an explanation than admit it doesn't know. Unfortunately, fear often becomes the author of those explanations. Think about a time when you walked into a room and someone suddenly stopped talking. Your mind might whisper, "They were talking about me." Could that be true? Perhaps. Could they have simply finished their conversation? Absolutely. Could they have been discussing something completely unrelated? Of course. Yet overthinking almost always chooses the explanation that creates the most anxiety. Here's an important realization. Your emotions often follow the stories you tell yourself, not necessarily the facts themselves. If you believe you've been rejected, you'll feel sadness, even if no rejection has occurred. If you believe you're going to fail, you'll experience fear before you've even begun. If you believe you're not good enough, you'll hesitate before every opportunity. The story becomes the source of the emotion. This is why changing your life often begins by changing your internal dialogue. Instead of immediately believing every thought, become curious about it. Ask yourself, is this a fact, or is this my interpretation? What evidence actually supports this belief? Could there be another explanation? These simple questions create space between you and your thoughts. In that space, wisdom begins to grow. Imagine your thoughts as clouds moving across the sky. Some are bright and encouraging, others are dark and intimidating, but none of them define the sky itself. You are not every thought that enters your mind. You are the observer who notices those thoughts. That distinction is incredibly powerful because it reminds you that thoughts are experiences, not commands. They can be acknowledged without being obeyed. Over time, as you question your assumptions instead of surrendering to them, something remarkable happens. The stories lose their power. The voice that once insisted, "You're going to fail," becomes just another opinion instead of an unquestionable truth. The fear that once stopped you becomes background noise instead of the director of your life. This doesn't mean you'll never experience negative thoughts again. It means you'll stop giving them absolute authority. Your mind will always tell stories. The goal isn't to silence the storyteller. The goal is to become a wiser listener. When you stop believing every fearful narrative your mind creates, you begin seeing life as it truly is, not through the distorted lens of anxiety, but through the clear eyes of possibility. And the stories that once kept you trapped can finally be replaced by a far more empowering one, the story of someone who no longer lets fear write the ending. Chapter 4. Escaping the perfectionism trap. Perfectionism has a remarkable talent for disguising itself as excellence. It tells you that your standards are simply higher than everyone else's. It convinces you that success belongs only to those who never make mistakes. It whispers that if you work just a little harder, think just a little longer, or wait just a little more, you'll finally be ready. But beneath those polished promises lies a painful truth. Perfectionism is rarely about doing your best. More often, it's about fearing your worst. At first glance, perfectionism appears admirable. After all, what's wrong with wanting to do quality work? What's wrong with striving for excellence? Absolutely nothing. Healthy ambition encourages growth. It inspires discipline, learning, and continuous improvement. Perfectionism is different. Excellence says, do your best and keep improving. Perfectionism says, if it isn't flawless, don't even begin. One mindset moves you forward. The other keeps you standing still. Think about the aspiring writer who dreams of publishing a book. Every day they rewrite the first chapter, searching for the perfect sentence. They polish every paragraph until it shines. Months become years. The manuscript never reaches the second chapter, because the first one is never considered good enough. Now imagine another writer. Their first draft is messy. Some chapters are weak. There are awkward sentences and clumsy ideas, but they keep writing. They finish the book, revise it, improve it, and eventually share it with the world. Who becomes the author? Not the one with the perfect first chapter. The one who was willing to write an imperfect first draft. That is one of life's greatest lessons. Progress always outruns perfection. Perfectionism doesn't protect your dreams, it delays them. The strange thing is that perfectionists often believe they're avoiding failure. In reality, they're avoiding judgment. Deep down, many perfectionists aren't afraid of making mistakes. They're afraid of what those mistakes might say about them. If I fail, people will think I'm incompetent. If I make a mistake, they'll lose respect for me. If I'm not the best, maybe I'm not enough. Notice how quickly performance becomes identity. A single mistake is no longer just a mistake. It becomes evidence against your worth. That's an impossible burden for anyone to carry. The truth is, every successful person you admire has failed more times than most people realize. The entrepreneur launched ideas that didn't work. The athlete lost important competitions. The musician performed poorly before finding their voice. The scientist spent years testing theories that led nowhere. The difference wasn't that they avoided mistakes. The difference was that they refused to let mistakes become permanent labels. Failure became feedback. Perfectionists often miss this lesson because they're trying to eliminate failure entirely. But failure isn't the opposite of success. In many cases, it's the path to success. Imagine learning to ride a bicycle. Would you expect to balance perfectly on your first attempt? Of course not. Falling isn't proof that you're incapable. It's proof that you're learning. Yet when it comes to careers, relationships, creativity, or personal growth, many adults expect themselves to succeed immediately. When reality doesn't match those expectations, they interpret normal struggles as personal flaws. This creates a dangerous cycle. You fear making mistakes, so you delay taking action. The delay increases your anxiety. The increased anxiety convinces you that you're still not ready, so you wait even longer. Meanwhile, opportunities quietly disappear. The perfect moment rarely arrives, because it was never supposed to. Life has never rewarded perfect timing. It rewards courageous beginnings. One of the most freeing questions you can ask yourself is this: what if good enough is enough for today? That question doesn't encourage laziness. It encourages momentum. A completed project can always be improved. An unfinished project cannot. A conversation can be refined through experience. A conversation that never happens teaches you nothing. A business can evolve after it opens. A business that remains only an idea can never serve anyone. Action creates improvement. Waiting creates regret. Another hidden cost of perfectionism is exhaustion. Trying to control every detail leaves little energy for creativity or joy. You begin focusing so much on avoiding mistakes that you forget why you started in the first place. Work becomes stressful. Dreams become obligations. Growth becomes pressure. Eventually, even success feels empty because nothing ever seems good enough. Freedom begins when you redefine success. Instead of asking, was it perfect? Ask, did I make progress? Instead of asking, what if people judge me? Ask, what if I never give myself the chance? Instead of chasing flawless results, celebrate consistent effort. Each small step strengthens confidence. Each imperfect attempt teaches something valuable. Each completed task becomes proof that action matters more than endless preparation. Remember, perfection is an illusion. No masterpiece was created without rough drafts. No champion reached greatness without defeats. No meaningful life has ever been built by avoiding every possible mistake. You are allowed to be a beginner. You are allowed to learn as you go. You are allowed to produce work that isn't extraordinary on the first attempt, because perfection isn't what changes lives. Persistence does. As you leave this chapter, carry one simple truth with you. The life you've been waiting to live doesn't begin when you're perfect. It begins the moment you're brave enough to start before you feel ready. That single decision, to value progress over perfection, can unlock doors that years of overthinking never could. Chapter 5. Breaking the Cycle of Anxiety. Anxiety and overthinking are close companions. One feeds the other in a cycle that can feel impossible to escape. Anxiety creates fearful thoughts, and those thoughts create even more anxiety. Before long, your mind is running in circles, searching for answers that never seem to arrive. The frustrating part is that the harder you try to think your way out of anxiety, the stronger it often becomes. Imagine lying in bed late at night. The room is quiet, but your mind is anything but peaceful. You replay tomorrow's meeting, wondering what could go wrong. Then you remember an unfinished task from last week that reminds you of a financial concern. Soon your thoughts jump to your future, your health, your relationships, and every possible mistake you might make. Your body remains in bed, but your mind travels through dozens of imaginary problems. Morning finally arrives, and you're exhausted, not because you worked all night, but because your mind never stopped. This is the hidden cost of anxiety. Many people believe anxiety begins with their circumstances. They assume that if they could solve every problem, the anxiety would disappear. While real-life challenges certainly contribute to stress, anxiety often continues even after one problem is solved because the mind quickly searches for the next possible threat. Think of anxiety as an overly sensitive alarm system. A home security alarm serves an important purpose. It alerts you when there's genuine danger. But imagine if that alarm started ringing every time the wind blew or a bird landed on the roof. Eventually, the alarm itself would become the problem. Your mind can work the same way. Its purpose is to keep you safe. But when it becomes too sensitive, it begins treating ordinary situations as emergencies. A delayed response becomes rejection. A small mistake becomes failure. An uncertain future becomes a disaster waiting to happen. The alarm keeps ringing, even when there is no fire. One reason anxiety becomes so powerful is because your body responds to your thoughts as though they are real experiences. Your heart beats faster, your muscles tighten, your breathing becomes shallow. Stress hormones begin flowing through your body. These physical sensations convince you that something must be wrong. Then your mind searches for an explanation. If I feel this anxious, there must be something terrible about to happen. This belief creates another wave of fearful thoughts, which creates stronger physical sensations, and the cycle continues. Breaking this cycle doesn't begin by controlling every thought. It begins by calming your body. Your body and mind are deeply connected. When one becomes calmer, the other often follows. One of the simplest ways to interrupt anxiety is through slow, intentional breathing. When you're anxious, your breathing naturally becomes faster and shallower. By slowing your breath, you send a message to your nervous system that you're safe. You don't have to eliminate every worried thought. You simply have to remind your body that it doesn't need to prepare for battle. Another powerful practice is grounding yourself in the present moment. Anxiety usually lives in the future. It asks, what if this happens? What if I fail? What if everything goes wrong? Notice that almost every anxious thought begins with what if. Your life, however, is happening right now. Look around you. Feel your feet touching the ground. Notice the sounds in the room. Take a slow breath. These simple actions bring your attention back to reality instead of imagined futures. Another effective habit is writing your thoughts down. When worries stay trapped inside your mind, they often grow larger with each repetition. But once they're written on paper, they become easier to examine. You may notice that many of your worries repeat themselves day after day without ever becoming reality. Seeing them written down helps you separate possibilities from probabilities. Not everything that could happen is likely to happen. Movement is another powerful antidote to anxiety. When you're anxious, your body stores nervous energy. A short walk, gentle stretching, or even a few minutes of physical activity helps release that energy. You don't have to complete an intense workout. Simply moving reminds your brain that you're not trapped. Just as importantly, be mindful of what you feed your mind. Constant exposure to alarming news, endless social media scrolling, or comparing yourself to others can quietly increase anxiety without you realizing it. Your mind absorbs far more than you think. Protecting your peace sometimes means limiting what you allow into your mental space. Perhaps the most important lesson is this: stop demanding certainty. Many people believe they'll finally relax once they know exactly how everything will turn out, but certainty is a promise life has never made. Waiting for complete certainty before feeling calm is like waiting for the ocean to stop producing waves before learning to swim. The waves will keep coming. The goal is not to control the ocean. The goal is to become a stronger swimmer. Each time you respond to anxiety with calm instead of panic, you teach your brain a new lesson. Each time you take action despite uncertainty, you weaken fear's control. Each time you choose presence over prediction, you reclaim a little more peace. Anxiety may still knock on your door from time to time. That's part of being human. But you no longer have to invite it inside. Offer it a chair and let it control the conversation. The cycle can be broken, not in a single dramatic moment, but through small, consistent choices made every day. One calm breath, one grounded moment, one courageous step. Taken together, those simple actions become the path that leads you out of anxiety and back to a life where your thoughts no longer dictate your future, but simply pass through like clouds across an open sky. Chapter 6. The Courage to Let Go. Some of the heaviest burdens you'll ever carry are invisible. They aren't made of stone or steel. They're made of memories, regrets, guilt, resentment, and the desperate desire to control what cannot be controlled. These emotional weights don't just occupy your heart, they occupy your mind. They become the fuel that keeps overthinking alive, replaying the same moments over and over, as though one more analysis could somehow rewrite the past. But the past never changes. Only your relationship with it does. Think about a mistake you've made. Perhaps it was a poor decision, a missed opportunity, or words you wish you could take back. At first, it's natural to reflect. Reflection helps us learn, but overthinking turns reflection into punishment. Instead of asking, "What can I learn from this?" you begin asking, "Why did I do that? If only I had chosen differently. What if I had said something else?" The conversation repeats endlessly, yet no new answers appear. Your mind keeps reopening a chapter that has already been written. Regret has an important purpose. It reminds us that our choices matter. But when regret becomes your permanent home, it no longer teaches, it traps. Guilt can work the same way. Healthy guilt encourages responsibility. It motivates us to apologize, make amends, and grow into better people. Unhealthy guilt, however, convinces us that one mistake defines our entire identity. You stop saying, "I made a mistake." You start believing, "I am a mistake." Those two sentences carry entirely different meanings. One leaves room for growth, the other leaves only shame. Then there is resentment. Resentment often begins with pain. Someone betrayed your trust, treated you unfairly, or caused wounds that still ache years later. Holding on to that anger may feel like justice. It may even feel like protection. But resentment is like carrying a burning piece of coal, hoping someone else will be the one who gets burned. The longer you hold it, the more it hurts you. Forgiveness is often misunderstood. Forgiveness does not mean pretending nothing happened. It does not excuse harmful behavior or erase painful memories. Forgiveness means refusing to let someone else's actions continue controlling your inner peace. It is a gift you give yourself. Perhaps the hardest thing to let go of is the illusion of control. Many overthinkers secretly believe that if they analyze every possibility, they can prevent disappointment. They replay conversations to avoid future misunderstandings. They imagine every possible outcome before making a decision. They try to predict every obstacle life might place in their path. But life has never been completely predictable. No amount of thinking can guarantee success. No amount of worrying can eliminate uncertainty. Trying to control everything is like trying to hold water in your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips away. Real peace comes from recognizing the difference between what you can control and what you cannot. You can control your effort. You can control your attitude. You can control your honesty, kindness, discipline, and courage. You cannot control every outcome. You cannot control other people's opinions. You cannot control the past. The more energy you spend fighting uncontrollable things, the less energy you have for the parts of life you can actually influence. Imagine standing on the shore of a river, trying to stop the current with your bare hands. You could spend all day struggling against the water, becoming exhausted without changing its direction. Or you could accept that the river will continue flowing and choose where you want to walk next. Acceptance is not surrender. Acceptance is clarity. It says, this is where I am. Now what is my next step? That simple shift transforms your relationship with life. Instead of living in constant resistance, you begin living with intention. Letting go is not a single decision you make once. It is a practice you return to again and again. Some days it will feel easy. Other days your mind will want to revisit old wounds and old fears. When that happens, remind yourself that healing doesn't require you to erase the past. It requires you to stop allowing the past to dictate your future. Every time you release one regret, one resentment, or one impossible expectation, you create space inside yourself. Space for peace, space for hope, space for new experiences. Most importantly, space for the person you are still becoming. You are not chained to your worst decision. You are not defined by someone else's opinion. You are not required to carry yesterday's pain into tomorrow's opportunities. The courage to let go isn't about forgetting where you've been. It's about deciding that where you've been will no longer determine where you're going. When you finally loosen your grip on what you cannot change, you'll discover something surprising. Your hands are no longer full. They're finally free to hold the life that's waiting ahead. Chapter 7. Trust yourself again. There comes a point in every overthinker's life when the biggest problem is no longer making the wrong decision. The biggest problem is believing they can't make any decision at all. Confidence doesn't disappear overnight. It fades quietly. One hesitation becomes two. One moment of self-doubt becomes a habit. Before long, you begin questioning everything. You reread every message before sending it. You replay every conversation after it ends. You seek endless advice before making even the smallest choices. Somewhere along the way, you stop trusting your own judgment. The tragedy is that you rarely notice it happening. Imagine standing in a restaurant, staring at the menu. 20 minutes pass as you compare every option. You worry about choosing something you won't enjoy. Eventually, you make a decision, but instead of relaxing, you wonder if another choice would have been better. The meal isn't the problem, the habit is. When your mind treats every decision as though it will determine your entire future, life becomes exhausting. Overthinking convinces you that every choice must be perfect because mistakes are unacceptable. But life has never demanded perfect decisions. It asks only that you keep moving, learning, and adapting. Think back to your childhood. Before you learned to overanalyze everything, you made decisions naturally. You explored. You tried new things. You fell, stood up, and tried again. You didn't need certainty before taking every step. So what changed? Life happened. Perhaps you experienced failure. Perhaps someone criticized you. Perhaps you made a painful mistake that taught you to question yourself. Over time, your brain began creating a simple rule. Be extra careful. Don't make another mistake. At first, that rule seemed helpful. Eventually, it became a prison. Here's something important to remember. Making a wrong decision occasionally does not mean you have poor judgment. It means you're human. Even the wisest people make choices they later regret. The difference is that they don't allow one mistake to destroy their trust in themselves. Imagine learning to drive. In the beginning, every movement requires intense concentration. You second-guess every turn, every mirror check, every decision. But with experience, confidence grows, not because you've become perfect, but because you've proven to yourself that you can handle unexpected situations. Life works the same way. Confidence is not built before action. Confidence is built because of action. This is one of the greatest misunderstandings about self-confidence. Many people believe they must feel confident before taking risks. In reality, confidence usually arrives afterward. The entrepreneur doesn't feel completely certain before starting a business. The speaker doesn't eliminate every fear before walking onto the stage. The athlete doesn't wait until doubt disappears before entering the competition. They act first. Their confidence grows through experience. Every action becomes evidence. Every challenge overcome becomes proof. Every small success reminds the brain, I handled that. Maybe I can handle the next challenge too. That is how trust is rebuilt. Not through endless thinking, through repeated experience. Another reason people lose trust in themselves is because they constantly seek external approval. They ask everyone else what they should do. Friends, family, co-workers, the internet. There's nothing wrong with asking for advice. Wisdom often comes from listening to others, but advice should inform your decision, not replace it. If every important choice depends on someone else's opinion, you slowly teach yourself that your own voice doesn't matter. It does. No one else has lived your life. No one else carries your values, dreams, experiences, and goals in exactly the same way you do. The final decision must always belong to you. That also means accepting responsibility for your choices. Responsibility isn't something to fear, it's something to embrace. When you take ownership of your decisions, you stop seeing mistakes as proof of failure. Instead, you see them as valuable teachers. Every experience gives you information. Some lessons come through success, others come through disappointment. Both help you grow. A practical way to strengthen self-trust is to begin with small decisions. Choose your meal without overthinking. Respond to an email without rewriting it 10 times. Speak your opinion during a meeting. Take the first step on a project you've been postponing. These moments may seem insignificant, they aren't. Every small decision sends a powerful message to your brain. I trust myself enough to move forward. Over time, those messages become beliefs. Those beliefs become habits. Those habits become confidence. Remember, confidence is not the absence of uncertainty. It is the willingness to act despite uncertainty. You don't need to know exactly how every situation will unfold. You only need to believe that whatever happens, you are capable of responding. That belief is stronger than certainty, because it isn't based on perfect outcomes. It's based on your ability to adapt. As this chapter comes to a close, leave behind the impossible goal of never making another mistake. Instead, embrace a far more powerful goal. Become someone who trusts themselves enough to keep going, even after making one. Because every meaningful life is built by people who had the courage to decide, the humility to learn, and the confidence to begin again. Trust yourself, not because you'll always be right, but because you've become strong enough to grow from whatever comes next. Chapter 8. Silence the inner critic. Of all the voices you hear throughout your life, none has more influence than the one inside your own mind. It is the voice that speaks after a mistake. It is the voice that whispers before you take a risk. It is the voice that comments on your appearance, your abilities, your choices, and your future. For many people, that voice isn't encouraging. It's relentlessly critical. You should have done better. You're not smart enough. Everyone else has figured it out except you. You'll probably fail anyway. If you've lived with this inner dialogue for years, you may not even recognize how harsh it has become. It feels normal because you've heard it for so long. But imagine speaking to a close friend the way you sometimes speak to yourself. Would you constantly remind them of every mistake? Would you call them a failure after one setback? Would you tell them they aren't good enough every time they faced a challenge? Probably not. Yet many people treat themselves with less kindness than they offer complete strangers. Where does this inner critic come from? Sometimes it develops from childhood experiences. Perhaps you grew up in an environment where mistakes were heavily criticized and achievements were expected. Maybe you absorbed the voices of parents, teachers, or peers until those voices became your own. Sometimes it grows from painful experiences later in life. A public failure, harsh rejection, or repeated disappointment can convince you that constant self-criticism will somehow prevent future pain. Your mind begins believing that if it points out every weakness first, no one else can hurt you. But that strategy comes at a tremendous cost. The inner critic doesn't make you stronger. It makes you smaller. Instead of motivating you, it drains your confidence. Instead of preparing you for success, it convinces you not to try. Instead of helping you grow, it keeps you focused on your flaws. Ironically, many people believe they need this critical voice. They worry that if they stop judging themselves, they'll become lazy or complacent. But think about the people who have encouraged you most in life. Did they inspire you through constant criticism, or did they believe in your potential while still challenging you to improve? Real growth comes from encouragement, combined with honesty, not humiliation. There is a profound difference between accountability and self-attack. Accountability says, "That didn't go well. Let's learn from it." The inner critic says, "That didn't go well because you're not good enough." One focuses on behavior. The other attacks identity. One creates growth. The other creates shame. The good news is that your inner critic is not your true voice. It is a habit of thinking, and habits can be changed. The first step is awareness. Pay attention to how you speak to yourself throughout the day. Notice the words you use after making a mistake. Listen to the thoughts that appear before you begin something difficult. Don't judge those thoughts, simply notice them. Awareness creates choice. Once you recognize the inner critic, you can begin replacing it with a wiser voice, not a voice that ignores reality, a voice that tells the truth with compassion. Instead of saying, "I always mess everything up," try saying, "That didn't go as planned, but I can learn from it." Instead of saying, "I'm terrible at this," try saying, "I'm still developing this skill." Instead of saying, "I'll never succeed," remind yourself, every expert was once a beginner. These aren't empty affirmations, they're balanced perspectives. They leave room for growth. Self-compassion is often misunderstood. Some people think it means making excuses or lowering standards. In reality, self-compassion means treating yourself with the same patience and understanding you would offer someone you genuinely care about. Imagine a child learning to walk. When they stumble, you don't criticize them for falling. You encourage them to stand up and try again. Why? Because you understand that falling is part of learning. Now ask yourself this: why should your own personal growth be any different? Every new skill, every meaningful goal, every significant change involves moments of uncertainty and failure. You don't become stronger by never falling. You become stronger by refusing to let each fall define you. Another powerful practice is celebrating progress instead of obsessing over perfection. Your inner critic only notices what's missing. A compassionate mind notices what's improving. Perhaps you spoke up once today when you normally would have stayed silent. Perhaps you completed a task you've been avoiding. Perhaps you chose courage over comfort in one small moment. Those victories matter. They deserve your attention. Remember, the voice you listen to most eventually becomes the voice you believe. If you constantly feed yourself criticism, you'll begin seeing yourself through that lens. If you consistently practice compassion, honesty, and encouragement, your confidence will slowly grow stronger. Silencing the inner critic doesn't mean it will disappear forever. It means it no longer controls the conversation. Its words lose their authority. Its judgments lose their power. And in the quiet that follows, another voice begins to emerge. A calmer voice, a wiser voice, a voice that reminds you that your value has never depended on being perfect. Your worth was never something you had to earn. It has always been there, waiting beneath the noise of self-doubt. When you learn to speak to yourself with kindness instead of condemnation, you don't become weaker, you become resilient, because the strongest people are not those who never hear an inner critic. They are the ones who choose, day after day, not to believe everything it says. Chapter 9. Choosing Action Over Analysis. There comes a moment when thinking can no longer improve your life. That moment is when action must take over. Many people spend years searching for the perfect plan, the perfect opportunity, or the perfect version of themselves before they begin. They read more books, watch more videos, gather more advice, and wait for the day when they finally feel completely ready. But that day rarely arrives. Readiness is not something that suddenly appears one morning. It is something you build by stepping forward, even while uncertainty is still standing beside you. Imagine someone who wants to become physically fit. They spend months comparing workout programs, researching diets, watching fitness videos, and reading countless articles about the best exercise routine. Every week they discover a new method that promises even better results, so they postpone starting once again. Meanwhile, another person knows very little. They simply begin by taking a 20-minute walk every evening. 6 months later, the second person is healthier, stronger, and more confident, not because they knew more, but because they did more. This is one of the greatest truths about personal growth. Action creates clarity. Overthinkers often believe clarity comes first. They imagine that once every question is answered, they will finally have the confidence to move. Life teaches the opposite lesson. Clarity often appears only after movement begins. You cannot steer a parked car. It must be moving before you can change its direction. In the same way, your life becomes easier to guide once you begin taking action. Think back to a time when you were afraid to do something new. Perhaps it was your first day at a new job, your first public presentation, or the first time you introduced yourself to someone you admired. Before it happened, your mind probably imagined dozens of possible disasters. Yet once you actually took the first step, you discovered something surprising. The experience wasn't nearly as terrifying as your imagination had predicted. Fear grows strongest in stillness. Action weakens it. That doesn't mean fear disappears overnight. It simply loses its ability to control your choices. Every small action sends a powerful message to your brain. I survived. I can do this again. This is how confidence is built, not through positive thinking alone, but through repeated evidence. Many people believe they need motivation before they act. In reality, motivation often follows action. Think about how difficult it can be to begin cleaning a messy room or starting an important project. Before you begin, your energy feels low, but after working for just 10 or 15 minutes, momentum starts to build. Your mind begins focusing on progress instead of resistance. Action creates energy, waiting drains it. This is why the smallest step is often the most important one. You don't have to finish the entire journey today, you only have to begin it. If writing a book feels overwhelming, write 1 page. If starting a business feels impossible, research 1 customer. If improving your health seems difficult, take 1 walk. Small actions may seem insignificant in the moment, but they create something incredibly valuable: momentum. Momentum has a quiet power. It transforms difficult tasks into manageable habits. It teaches your brain that progress is normal. Each completed step makes the next one feel a little easier. Before long, what once seemed impossible becomes part of your daily routine. Perfectionists often struggle with this idea because they believe small actions aren't enough. They want dramatic breakthroughs. They wait for massive inspiration or ideal conditions. But remarkable lives are rarely built through one extraordinary moment. They are built through ordinary actions repeated consistently over time. A single drop of water seems powerless, yet over many years, flowing water can carve valleys through solid rock. Consistency accomplishes what intensity alone cannot. There will still be days when doubt returns. Your mind may whisper that you're moving too slowly or that someone else is making faster progress. Don't listen to that comparison. You are not competing with another person's journey. You are building your own. Measure your progress against who you were yesterday, not against who someone else is today. Another important lesson is that mistakes are not signs to stop. They are signs that you're participating in life. Every entrepreneur has launched imperfect ideas. Every artist has created work they later improved. Every skilled professional was once a beginner who made countless errors. The difference between those who succeed and those who remain stuck is not intelligence or talent. It is the willingness to keep moving after imperfection appears. Remember, action is not the absence of fear. Courage is acting while fear is still present. Waiting until fear disappears gives fear complete control over your future. Acting despite fear reminds you that fear is only one voice in your mind, not the one that gets to make your decisions. As you finish this chapter, make a simple promise to yourself. Stop asking, what is the perfect next step? Instead, ask, what is the smallest action I can take today? Then do it before your mind has time to argue. Because every meaningful achievement begins the same way, not with certainty, but with a single courageous step. The moment you choose action over endless analysis, you stop watching life from the sidelines and begin creating the future you've been thinking about for far too long. Chapter 10. Living Beyond Your Thoughts. For much of your life, you may have believed that your thoughts define who you are. When your mind tells you that you're not good enough, you feel inadequate. When it predicts failure, you become afraid to try. When it reminds you of your past mistakes, you begin to believe your future has already been decided. But one of the most liberating discoveries you can make is this: you are not your thoughts, you are the person who notices them. That single realization has the power to transform the way you experience life. Imagine standing beside a busy highway. Hundreds of cars pass by every hour. Some are small, some are large, some move quickly, while others crawl through traffic. Now imagine believing that you must jump into every car that passes. It would be exhausting and dangerous. Your thoughts work in much the same way. Every day, hundreds or even thousands of thoughts pass through your mind. Some are encouraging, some are fearful, some are useful, while others are completely meaningless. The problem begins when you believe you must climb into every thought and let it take you wherever it wants to go. A single negative thought appears. I'm going to fail. Instead of observing it, you accept it as truth. Soon another thought follows. If I fail, everyone will judge me. Then another, maybe I'm not capable after all. Within minutes, one passing thought has become an emotional storm. The thought wasn't the real problem. Believing it without question was. Your mind produces thoughts automatically. You don't consciously choose every idea that appears. Just as clouds drift across the sky without asking permission, thoughts drift through your awareness. Some deserve your attention. Many do not. Learning to live beyond your thoughts means developing the wisdom to choose which ones deserve your energy. Consider how often your mind replays old memories. Perhaps you remember an embarrassing moment from years ago. Your heart races as though the event is happening again. Yet nothing has changed except the picture inside your mind. Or perhaps your thoughts race toward the future, imagining problems that may never exist. You begin living tomorrow's fears while completely missing today's opportunities. In both situations, your attention has been pulled away from the only place where life actually exists, the present moment. The present is where conversations happen. It's where laughter is shared. It's where friendships grow. It's where dreams are built. No meaningful action has ever taken place in yesterday or tomorrow. Everything worthwhile happens now. This doesn't mean ignoring the future or forgetting the past. Planning is important, and reflection helps us learn. But there is a difference between visiting the past and living there. There is a difference between preparing for tomorrow and becoming trapped inside it. The goal is balance. Another powerful shift occurs when you stop building your identity around your thoughts and begin building it around your values. Thoughts change constantly. One day you feel confident. The next day you doubt yourself. If your identity depends on your changing thoughts, Your sense of self will always feel unstable. Values are different. Values are the qualities you choose to live by, regardless of how you feel. Kindness, honesty, courage, curiosity, perseverance. These qualities remain steady even when your emotions fluctuate. For example, you may feel afraid before giving an important presentation. Your thoughts tell you to avoid it. But if one of your values is courage, you step forward anyway. You haven't eliminated fear. You've simply chosen to let your values guide your actions instead of your emotions. That is real freedom. You no longer ask, "How do I feel right now?" You begin asking, "Who do I want to be in this moment?" The answer changes everything. Living beyond your thoughts also means paying closer attention to the life unfolding around you. Notice the warmth of sunlight on your face. Listen carefully when someone you love is speaking. Enjoy a meal without checking your phone every few minutes. Celebrate small victories instead of rushing toward the next worry. These simple moments may seem ordinary, but together they create an extraordinary life. Too many people postpone happiness until every problem has been solved. I'll relax when I'm successful. I'll be happy when everything is under control. I'll enjoy life once my mind finally becomes quiet. But life doesn't wait for perfect conditions. Joy is often found in imperfect moments that you choose to fully experience. As this chapter comes to an end, remember that your thoughts are visitors, not permanent residents. Some will encourage you, others will challenge you. A few will try to convince you that fear should control your future. Let them come, let them go. You don't have to fight every thought, and you certainly don't have to believe every one of them. Your thoughts may speak loudly, but they do not have the final word. Your choices do. When you stop allowing every passing thought to define your identity, you create space for something far more powerful, a life guided not by fear or endless analysis, but by purpose, presence, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing exactly who you choose to become. Chapter 11. Building an Unshakable Mind. By now you've learned that overthinking is not a personality trait. It is not a life sentence, nor is it a flaw that defines who you are. It is a pattern, a collection of habits that developed over time. And just as those habits were learned, they can be replaced. But lasting freedom doesn't come from one powerful realization alone. It comes from building a mind that remains steady even when life becomes uncertain. An unshakable mind isn't a mind that never experiences fear, stress, or doubt. It's a mind that refuses to be controlled by them. Life will continue to test you. There will still be unexpected setbacks, difficult conversations, disappointing moments, and uncertain seasons. The goal isn't to create a life without challenges. The goal is to become the kind of person who can face those challenges without losing your inner peace. Think about a tree during a powerful storm. A tree with shallow roots may appear strong on a calm day, but the first strong wind can tear it from the ground. A tree with deep roots, however, bends without breaking. It doesn't resist every gust of wind. It adapts, remains grounded, and stands tall when the storm passes. Your daily habits are your roots. When your habits are weak, every stressful event feels overwhelming. One criticism ruins your day. One setback convinces you to quit. One unexpected problem sends your mind into endless worry. But when your habits are strong, you become emotionally grounded. You still feel disappointment, but you recover faster. You still experience uncertainty, but it no longer controls your decisions. The first habit of an unshakable mind is protecting your attention. Your attention is one of your greatest assets. Wherever your attention goes, your energy follows. If you spend hours consuming negative news, comparing yourself to others on social media, or constantly exposing yourself to unnecessary stress, don't be surprised when your mind feels overwhelmed. Imagine your mind as a garden. Whatever you water will grow. If you water fear, fear grows. If you water gratitude, gratitude grows. If you water comparison, insecurity grows. If you water hope, resilience grows. You cannot always control which seeds land in your garden, but you can choose which ones you nurture. The second habit is creating simple daily routines. Many people underestimate the power of consistency because they are searching for dramatic transformations. But your life is shaped less by what you do once and more by what you do repeatedly. A few minutes of quiet reflection each morning, a daily walk, reading a few pages of a meaningful book, writing down 3 things you're grateful for before bed. These actions may seem ordinary, but together they create extraordinary stability. They remind your mind that even when the world feels chaotic, you can still create order within yourself. The third habit is accepting discomfort instead of running from it. Much of overthinking comes from trying to avoid uncomfortable emotions. You don't want to feel rejection, failure, embarrassment, or uncertainty, so your mind works overtime, trying to eliminate every possible risk. But emotional strength isn't built by avoiding discomfort. It's built by facing it. Consider a person learning to swim. They cannot master swimming by standing safely on the shore, reading books about water. Eventually, they must step into the pool. At first, it feels uncomfortable. Their movements are awkward. They swallow a little water, but each lesson builds confidence. Life works the same way. Every uncomfortable experience you face with courage expands your capacity to handle future challenges. The fourth habit is choosing your response instead of reacting automatically. You cannot control every event that happens to you, but you always have influence over your response. Someone criticizes you, you can spend the next week replaying their words in your mind. Or you can ask, is there something useful I can learn from this? If yes, learn from it. If not, let it go. A plan doesn't work. You can interpret it as proof that you should give up. Or you can see it as feedback that helps you make a better plan. The event remains the same. Your response changes the outcome. This is where true resilience begins. Another essential habit is surrounding yourself with people who strengthen your mindset. The people you spend the most time with influence your thinking more than you realize. If you're constantly surrounded by negativity, criticism and fear, it's difficult to develop confidence. On the other hand, spending time with people who encourage growth, responsibility, and optimism helps reshape your own perspective. Choose relationships that challenge you to become better, not relationships that keep you trapped in old patterns. Finally, remember that building an unshakable mind is not about becoming perfect. There will still be days when anxiety returns, when self-doubt whispers in your ear, or when old habits try to reclaim your attention. Don't see those moments as failure. See them as opportunities to practice everything you've learned. Every time you pause instead of panicking, you become stronger. Every time you choose action over hesitation, you become wiser. Every time you replace self-criticism with self-compassion, you become more resilient. Strength is not built in moments of comfort. It is built in the quiet decisions you make when life becomes difficult. As you look back on the journey you've taken through this audiobook, you'll notice that the greatest transformation hasn't been in your circumstances. The world around you may still look much the same. The real transformation has happened within you. You've begun replacing fear with understanding. You've exchanged perfectionism for progress. You've learned to question your thoughts instead of obeying them. You've discovered the courage to act despite uncertainty. These are the roots of an unshakable mind. And once those roots grow deep enough, no temporary storm can uproot the person you've become. Your peace is no longer dependent on perfect circumstances. It is built from the habits, choices and mindset you strengthen every single day. That is real resilience, and it is a strength that no challenge can ever take away. Chapter 12. Your new life begins today. Every meaningful journey eventually arrives at a moment of decision. Not a decision about what you've learned, but a decision about who you choose to become. Over the course of this audiobook, you've explored the hidden prison of overthinking. You've discovered why your brain clings to fear, how your inner stories shape your reality, why perfectionism keeps you stuck, and how anxiety quietly steals your peace. You've learned to question your thoughts instead of obeying them, to trust yourself again, to silence your inner critic, and to choose action over endless analysis. But knowledge alone does not change a life. A decision does. There are two versions of your future waiting for you. The first is familiar. It is the future where every opportunity is examined until it disappears. It is the future where fear disguises itself as caution, where dreams remain plans, and where tomorrow always seems like a better day to begin. In that future, nothing dramatic happens overnight. Instead, life slowly slips away through hesitation, second-guessing, and the quiet belief that one more day of thinking will finally produce certainty. The second future looks very different. It isn't free from fear. It isn't free from mistakes or uncertainty. But it belongs to someone who has made peace with those realities. It belongs to someone who understands that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision that something else matters more. That person is not a different person. That person is you. The only difference is the choice you make today. Imagine standing at the edge of a bridge. Behind you is the familiar world of overthinking. It is comfortable because you know it well, even though it has caused you pain. Ahead lies a new path. You cannot see every step. You cannot predict every challenge. But you know one thing with absolute certainty. You cannot build a new life while standing still. At some point, every successful person you've ever admired reached a moment like this. They didn't know exactly how things would unfold. They didn't possess every answer. They simply decided that the pain of remaining the same had become greater than the fear of changing. That decision changed everything. Perhaps you've been waiting for confidence before taking the first step. Now you understand that confidence follows commitment. Perhaps you've been waiting until you felt fearless. Now you know that fear often walks beside courage, not instead of it. Perhaps you've been waiting for the perfect time. Now you realize that the perfect time has always been an illusion. There is only this moment, this breath, this decision. Life is not transformed by giant leaps taken once in a lifetime. It is transformed by small choices made consistently. Choosing to speak when fear tells you to remain silent. Choosing to apply for the opportunity instead of assuming you'll be rejected. Choosing to forgive instead of carrying resentment. Choosing to begin instead of endlessly preparing. These choices may seem ordinary, yet they shape extraordinary lives. Never underestimate the power of one small courageous action. A single conversation can restore a relationship. A single application can change a career. A single habit can transform your health. A single decision can alter the direction of your entire future. Most turning points don't announce themselves. They simply begin with one brave step. There will still be difficult days ahead. There will be moments when old habits try to return. Your mind may once again suggest that you wait, analyze, or postpone. The familiar voice of doubt may whisper that you're not ready. When that happens, don't become discouraged. Remember how far you've already come. Progress is never a straight line. Growth is not measured by how rarely you struggle. It is measured by how quickly you remember who you are and choose your path again. Every time you choose courage over comfort, you strengthen a new identity, an identity that is no longer built on fear, an identity built on resilience, on purpose, on action. One day, you'll look back at the person you were before this journey began. You'll remember the endless nights spent worrying about problems that never happened. You'll remember the opportunities you nearly missed because you doubted yourself. You'll remember how exhausting it felt to carry every possible future inside your mind. And you'll realize something remarkable. The prison door had never been locked. The key was never hidden from you. It was found in every lesson you've embraced along this journey. It was found when you stopped believing every thought, when you accepted that perfection was impossible, when you learned to trust yourself, when you embraced uncertainty instead of fighting it, and most importantly, when you chose action over fear. From this day forward, don't ask yourself, will the first ever overthink again? You're human. Thoughts will continue to come and go. Instead, ask a far more powerful question. Will the first allow my thoughts to decide the direction of my life? The answer belongs to you. Choose progress over perfection. Choose presence over worry. Choose courage over comfort. Choose action over endless analysis. Because your future has never been created by the thoughts that stayed inside your mind. It has always been created by the actions you were brave enough to take. Your new life doesn't begin tomorrow. It doesn't begin when everything feels certain. It begins now, with this decision, with this moment, with you. You've reached the end of this audiobook, but this is not the end of your journey. In many ways, it's the beginning of a new chapter, one written not by fear. There will still be days when your mind races. There will still be moments when uncertainty knocks at your door. That's part of being human. The goal was never to eliminate every anxious thought or silence every doubt. The goal was to make sure those thoughts no longer control the direction of your life. Remember what you've learned. Your thoughts are not facts. Perfection is not the price of success. Confidence is built through action, not endless preparation. Peace comes from accepting what you cannot control and focusing on what you can. Every small step you take is stronger than 1,000 perfect plans that never leave your mind. Whenever you catch yourself falling back into old patterns, don't judge yourself. Simply pause, take a deep breath, and remind yourself of the person you've chosen to become. Growth is not about never stumbling again. It's about getting back up with greater wisdom each time you fall. The life you've been dreaming about has never been waiting on perfect circumstances. It has been waiting on your decision to begin. So trust yourself. Take the first step. Speak the words you've been afraid to say. Chase the dream you've been postponing. Let go of the fears that have kept you standing still for far too long. Your mind can be a powerful tool, but it should never become your prison. From this moment forward, let your thoughts inspire you, not imprison you. Let your courage become louder than your fear, your actions stronger than your doubts, and your purpose greater than your excuses. Thank you for listening, and remember, your greatest victories begin the moment you stop overthinking and start living.